Hello everyone, it's Paul Tilley and welcome back to MR2300. Today we're looking at the second unit, and the second unit deals with the internet and internet applications. We're going to discuss the origins of the technology involved in the internet here. We're going to explain the current structure of the internet and how the web works, and we're just going to describe really how the internet and web features support e-commerce. And then we move to probably one of the most important aspects of e-commerce right now, which is mobile applications. You'll find this in Chapter 3, so please review Chapter 3 of your textbook. First, I gotta, it's important to be old enough, I suppose. In 1993, the National ran a section on this thing called the Internet. You're probably looking at this today and saying, well, the internet's been around for years, but no, 1993, it was kind of a rare thing. So this article that you see here is just kind of gives you a appreciation for how much things have improved, changed, developed over the last number of years. Effectively, the history of the internet is summed up in two words: Cold War. The whole concept after World War II was the Russians were up against the West, U.S. And there was a lot of conniving going back and forth between the communist Russians, communist USSR, and the United States. And, there were all kinds of threats of a Third World War. A war that did never happen, thankfully, became known as the Cold War because it was absolutely that. It was just a cold, distant war where not one single bomb was dropped, but there was constant tension between the East and the West. As part of the process of the Cold War, of doing the spying, these sorts of things, a lot of technology was built, including putting man on the moon. That was really, on its surface, it was designed as, a wonderful project, putting man on the moon. But underlying all of it had to do with elements of a competitive environment that existed between the United States, Western world, and the Soviet Union. As technology became more important, we saw I call it the strategic value of technology. The United States worked on a project that was really designed to connect computers from universities all across the United States together. And that way, if one part of the United States was bombed, this technology would allow other computers to kind of take over, and the concept of the management of government would continue owing to this web of connections between universities and between computer systems that were considered to be nuclear survivable. The purpose of that was to allow computers to talk to one another, but also to be independent of one another, so that if one broke, the other one could take over. Hence the concept of a web, a connecting web between all of these computers. I have some videos put in here that go into fairly great depth. Part 1, 2, and 3 you'll see on the history of the internet, and you'll see how it really kind of developed over time. The first real phase of the internet, though, really didn't occur from a commercial public perspective until really we're looking at 60s, 70s, and that's where the technology to allow the transfer of information from one computer to another was really developed. And this became known as transmission control protocols. These allowed computers to talk to one another in a common language. In 1975 through to 1995, the Department of Defense of the United States came up with this thing called Arpanet, and it was the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network. And again, very much Cold War related. The whole idea was to be able to connect computers together in a cheap, fast, affordable connectivity system that would allow people to communicate over vast distances very easily. The commercial concept of this really started to take hold at that point in time, too, where businesses saw the opportunity to allow for electronic transfer of information between computers in one office and computers in another. And we came up with this concept really of electronic data interchange. The third phase, commercialization, really didn't take place until the 1990s. And we saw there the real opening of the World Wide Web, which allowed for you and me and the general public to get onto this system that would allow one computer, such as one we were on, to connect to another. And this is what the heart of the CBC story that I just asked you to look at really talked about, was this stage right here, this initial commercialization of the internet. People saw the opportunity to be able to connect computers together for the purposes of business transactions. E-commerce really started to take hold in the late 1990s, going towards the year 2000. The Y2K era was a key development phase for computer technology using the web, and a lot of people saw it as a great opportunity and that the e-commerce was going to take over in the world, these sorts of things. That really didn't happen, because in the early 2000s, there was a kind of a right-sizing of this hype. Please take an opportunity to watch this video, and you'll find out more about that history. New technology did emerge, such as hypertext transfer protocols, which allowed for the simplification or the Macification of the web, so that you could see pictures, click on things, connect the links. Stuff that we take for granted now really didn't come about until then. We also need to differentiate the internet from the web. The internet is really the interconnected network of thousands and millions of computers for business, education, government, and individuals. The web is a part of the internet. It is its most popular service, providing access to you and me to these things called web pages. So if we look at the internet, how does it work? Well, we start to look at some of the technology pieces first. We're talking about IP addresses. Well, each computer has its own IP address, which is the internet protocol. It allows your computer to talk to another computer. It will allow those two computers to connect, like the phone numbers or the addresses of a computer. Then we have things called domain names, and the domain name allows companies or people to have an individual site, an address on the web that is known as a domain, such as paultilley.com. And we also have DNS servers, which are basically computers that are connected to the internet that allow these domain names to be connected to one another. So they're more or less the gateways to the internet computers. And then we have root servers. They're central directories of these domain names, such as .com, .ca, and the like. So these root servers are really basically central directories. And once the early stages of the internet were in place, after the year 2000, we saw some emergence. Web 3.0, it became known as. So what we end up with here is things like Facebook and Twitter and social media start to arise. But probably the biggest item that impacts all of those that has arisen out of this third generation of the web has been the advance of mobile technology. And mobile technology has moved the web, moved people's use of the web, and it moved e-commerce ahead by the largest possible measure, because you could access it from anywhere. For example, the computer I'm using to recording this is not physically wired to anything. It is connected over a web mobile technology that allows this computer to talk to the internet at a distance without any wires. Your iPhone, your Samsung Galaxy, your tablet, your iPad, whatever you want to call them, they're all connected over the internet as well through this short-range wireless technology that allows us, with battery technology improved, to basically carry it anywhere. And this has opened up the internet to so many more. And we see that online sales have really taken off since the iPhone came out in 2007. The technology of putting the web in people's hands or in people's pockets has really allowed the internet to grow exponentially and e-commerce to grow exponentially since in the 2010 decade. So mobile technology, the technology works. There's a little video here that explains the detail of how it works. This is FYI type information. We don't need to get into the engineering aspects of it as much as that if we know it works, we got to recognize what potential business applications do we have of it. The latest iteration of the internet has been something called cloud computing. What cloud computing does is it takes all of the storage and the programs and everything off the actual device and loads them up into what we call the cloud. And the cloud is basically a computer that is owned, a large computer system that's owned by some company that you access. Now, the advantage of that is that if you have a smart device that is connected to the internet, you can connect to this cloud and all the applications on it without having them reside on your computer. That way you can access stuff from anywhere, and it's not machine dependent. The online aspect of it, the consumer aspect of the web, is really known as e-commerce. There's lots of tools out there that help support that, things like web pages, things like email, things like instant messaging, such as WhatsApp and the like, that allows people to connect to one another, online message boards or forums, and you could imagine, things like Facebook could be considered an online message board for some degree. Voice over Internet Protocol allows you to talk over the phone through your computer. Web conferencing, I think since the pandemic's really started, we've seen lots of examples of web conferencing, Zoom, Teams, all of these, even this learning management system that we use here at the college, that would be considered a form of, or it has an element of web conferencing to it with the virtual classroom. We also have streaming media, which we're all familiar with, Netflix and the like, and search engines. Google is your friend. You can access everything on the web from Google and related type search engines. You're also familiar with podcasts or streaming services that are similar to podcasts, where the audio is held up on the cloud and you can access it anywhere. So you can download radio shows, conferencing, and the like through that. And social media. Social media, the difference between social media and regular internet is that social media allows for two-way or multiple-way communication between the user and the supplier of the information. Going forward, we're seeing a rise in virtual reality and augmented reality applications where you put on a headset and you can see things virtually. Companies like Caterpillar are using this now to do training for their staff for how to change an oil filter on a tractor, for example. If you can have a virtual tractor and show people where the oil filter is and how it's done, it saves a lot of time and you can do the training anywhere. We also have augmented reality, which is taking virtual reality and taking it even further, and that way we can bring in more of the senses. So application has been everywhere from healthcare tech really to manufacture. There's lots of internet technology that helps support e-commerce, and if you look at some of the infrastructure, speed, capacity has grown considerably with fiber and the like. Bandwidth, which is how much you can shove through the pipe, that has increased connectively. Satellite and internet technology, wireless access, mobile, local area networks, all of these things, Bluetooth, has all helped facilitate e-commerce even more. Some of the issues that have arisen are things like privacy, integrity, availability, authentication, and non-repudiation. Privacy is pretty straightforward. You want to make sure that your information is only shared with the person you want to share it with. Not everyone else has access to it. Integrity means that the information is complete and full. So it's assurance that the accuracy and completeness of the data goes there. Availability, that's who's it available to, what controls do we have on availability, and when is it? So is it there when you need it? Authentication, this is like you could sign a check with your signatures. The signature was a type of authentication. It can prove it was you. New technology has been brought in place to know that if I'm ordering something from Amazon, Amazon knows it's me and I commit to the sale. In other words, that we can create a contract. And non-repudiation means that I can't say that I didn't do it. It would effectively create a guarantee that if there is a purchase, the purchase was guaranteed to be made and payment will be guaranteed to follow. So those are the key things that I wanted you to look at in this unit. Please review it and take a look too at your assignments.